My mother shouted, "You're selfish. Leave the estate and don't ever return." So I walked out without a fight. Weeks later, my father called. "Why haven't you covered the insurance?" I replied, "Oh, I figured I was no longer needed." And then my phone exploded. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I didn't even say goodbye. I just zipped up my old gym bag, tossed in a pair of shoes, and walked out of the house like I was running a quick errand. I didn't look back, not even once. My name's Evan. I'm 27, and I used to live on my family's vineyard estate in Northern California. Now, I've got a one-bedroom condo above a bookstore in a lakeside town where nobody knows my name. And that's exactly how I want it. The call started before I even got off the highway. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I watched my phone vibrate on the passenger seat like it was having a seizure. First my mom, then dad, then mom again. No voicemails, just relentless calling like if they caught me fast enough, they could rewind the last 3 hours. They couldn't. That night, I sat on my tiny new balcony with a six-pack and a box of lukewarm takeout, watching the lake shimmer under the streetlights. I muted my phone, then flipped it face down. But the buzzing didn't stop. I knew it wouldn't. I almost laughed. For years, they barely said a word unless they needed something. A signature, a wire transfer, a favor for Clay. But now, the second I was gone, they had plenty to say. Funny how that works. I should have seen this coming. Hell, part of me probably did. But it was hard to admit, even to myself. For the longest time, I tried to believe we were just a family with quirks. Not a family that drained me like a business account. It always came back to Clay. My older brother, the visionary vintner. That's what the local paper called him once, back when he opened that overpriced wine truck that flopped after 3 months. He was the artist, the dreamer, the one who thought big. And me? I was the guy who made sure the power stayed on. Even when I got my business degree and moved to the city for work, they kept me tethered. There was always some urgent invoice, some frost damage, some investor pitch Clay couldn't finish because he was burned out. And I'd come home every weekend, my suit still folded in the back seat, to fix the messes no one else wanted to deal with. But I never said no. Not really. I thought it made me a good son, a responsible brother, the guy who held the family together. Turns out, it just made me useful. The night I left, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even write a note. I just packed enough for a few weeks and got in the car. If I had stayed any longer, they would have talked me into one more temporary payment. One more patch for a sinking ship they refused to abandon. Now, in my quiet little place above the bookstore, all I hear is the hum of the fridge and the occasional page turning below me. No guilt. No manipulation. Just my phone, buzzing with the realization that they finally lost the one person holding the whole damn estate together. And I'm not picking up. Back then, it didn't feel like manipulation. It felt like being a good son. Like doing what was expected. I think that's the part that stings the most, how normal it all felt, right up until the moment I walked away. Clay always got to be the one with the ideas. He dropped out of college to pursue wine culture through artistic entrepreneurship, whatever that meant. One year it was a wine and poetry bus tour through Sonoma. The next it was some absurd plan to open a speakeasy in a barn using upcycled barrels as booths. None of it ever worked. He'd blow through a chunk of dad's money or whatever he guilt out of mom, and then it'd quietly fade into nothing. But no one ever called him irresponsible. Not once. Meanwhile, I got a scholarship, finished my degree, and landed a job in logistics consulting. I worked 60-hour weeks and still made it home every other Sunday to check in on things, which really meant fixing Clay's trail of financial debris. My reward? A tight-lipped nod from Dad and an occasional dry, "You've always been steady, Evan." Steady. That was their word for me. Not talented. Not clever. Just steady. Like a fence post. Clay would show up late to family dinners, still half-drunk from a tasting or whatever nonsense he'd been doing, and Mom would smile like he'd just flown in from war. "He's trying, Evan," she'd whisper, whenever I raised an eyebrow. "He's got a vision. It's just hard for him to stay grounded." Hard for him? I was the one who kept the books balanced, made sure the estate taxes got paid, and put out fires every time a vendor threatened to cut us off. But to them, I was just the guy with the calculator. Clay was the heartbeat. I was the tourniquet. After I got promoted at work, I started sending money directly. Small things at first. Replacing a broken pump. Covering some weird seasonal staffing costs that Clay swore he'd reimburse me for. He never did. Then it became regular. Automatic transfers from my account to the vineyards. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got on their feet. But there was always a new problem. Always a new dream Clay needed, just a little help to realize. The worst part? They made it feel like my duty. My mother's sighs when the bills stacked too high. My father's little speeches about tradition and what it means to be part of a legacy. Even Clay joined in after a while, tossing me lines like, "You're better with numbers, man. You know what you're doing." It stopped being help. It became expected. Quietly, subtly, I went from being the kid who offered support to the man who funded the whole damn estate, and no one even said thank you. I remember one time I asked Mom if Clay ever paid anything toward the new fermentation tanks. She looked surprised, like I'd asked whether the sky was still blue. "Oh, honey," she said gently, "you know your brother doesn't think that way. That's why he needs you." That's when I started to realize they didn't want me to succeed for myself. They wanted me to succeed so I could keep rescuing them. Every achievement I had was just another rope they could pull. And every time I tried to set boundaries, they acted like I was betraying the family. Like I owed them. And for a while, I believed them. I really did. It was a Sunday, late summer, the kind of golden afternoon that used to make the vineyard look like something off a postcard. I had driven up with a trunk full of supplies, printer ink, paper, some bulk items Clay had texted about needing, but never actually asked for directly. Just a screenshot of a receipt and a thumbs-up emoji. When I pulled in, the place looked unusually clean. Too clean. I should have known something was off when I spotted Dad wearing a button-down instead of his usual vineyard tee. Mom was waiting on the porch. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come inside, honey," she said. "Let's talk before you unload." I followed them into the living room. Clay was already there, sprawled out on the couch with a half-empty glass of wine like he was starring in some indie film. He didn't look up. I barely sat down before Dad started. "Evan, we've been thinking. It's time to get serious about the estate's future." I nodded slowly. "Okay. What does that mean, exactly?" Mom glanced at Dad, then folded her hands on her lap. "We want to formalize things. Make it official. You've already been covering so many of the expenses, it just makes sense that you take over full financial responsibility. End to end." I blinked. "Wait, what?" Clay chuckled. "Dude, it's not that big a deal. You've basically been doing it already. Why not just commit?" I looked at him. "Because this isn't a gym membership. You're asking me to fund the entire estate. Indefinitely." Dad's tone sharpened. "It's not funding, Evan. It's investing in your legacy." I almost laughed. "My legacy?" Clay's still listed as head vintner on everything. You introduce him to investors as the visionary. I'm the guy who writes checks in the background. Mom sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Evan, this is what families do. Your brother's the creative. You're the structure. You've always known that." "Yeah," Clay said, swirling his wine. "You're the responsible one. We can't do this without you." I stood up. "You're right. You can't. And that's the problem." Dad's voice rose. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being honest. You want me to keep bleeding money into this place while Clay plays artist in residence. And now you want to make it official. Well, I'm officially done." Clay scoffed. "So what? You're just going to walk out? Turn your back on your own family?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Yes." Mom stood, alarmed. "Evan, don't you dare. If you walk out of here." "What?" I said. "You'll disown me? Stop calling?" That might actually be a relief. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the door, leaving the groceries and supplies behind. As I crossed the gravel driveway, the only sound was my boots crunching on the dirt. No one followed me. Not then, anyway. But the messages started before I even made it back to the freeway. 6 months. That's how long it had been since I last saw any of them. No vineyard visits. No bank transfers. No awkward Sunday dinners where Clay talked about microfermentation like he'd invented wine. Just me, my quiet little condo, and a new life that felt like breathing clean air for the first time. I'd started to enjoy the silence. Waking up without 10 unread messages. Cooking dinner without a lecture playing in my head about tradition or family duty. I found a part-time consulting gig and spent the rest of my time helping out at the bookstore downstairs. Nothing glamorous, but it felt real. That afternoon, I was organizing a used shelf when I felt my phone buzz in my back pocket. I ignored it. Probably a spam text. It buzzed again. Then again. I wiped my hands and checked. "Dad, why haven't you paid the vintner's insurance this month?" I stared at it for a second. Not a hello. Not a how are you. Just straight to business, like I was still the family's personal accountant. The nerve of that message, it was almost impressive. I sat down at the tiny kitchen counter upstairs and typed out a reply. Me, didn't think I was still on the hook. I didn't expect a response. I figured that would be that. But within minutes, the screen lit up again. Buzz. 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 The avalanche had begun. "Mom, Evan, we are in a real bind right now. Can you please just help us this once?" "Dad, don't be petty. This is serious. We could lose coverage." "Clay, wow. You ghost us for half a year, and now you're acting like a victim? Grow up." I tossed my phone onto the couch and let it vibrate itself into a frenzy. I didn't pick it back up for an hour. When I finally did, the messages had multiplied. They were switching gears already, cycling from entitlement to guilt like clockwork. But instead of feeling anxious or guilty like I used to, I felt something else. Something sharper. Satisfaction. It was like watching people realize the ATM was unplugged. That the kid they leaned on for years had finally stood up and walked away, and taken the ground with him. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling. I wasn't the one doing the math, fixing the leaks, holding things together. They were. And part of me wanted to let them keep falling. The next few days were a full-blown assault. Texts, emails, missed calls, voicemails. Clay even tried FaceTiming me at 2 in the morning. It was like they'd all suddenly remembered I existed, now that their bank account didn't. At first, I just watched. I'd open my phone and scroll through the messages like I was reading a group chat from strangers. Mom, your father is sick with worry. I haven't slept in days. Is that what you wanted? Dad, we supported you your whole life. This is how you repay us. Clay, you seriously need therapy. This martyr thing is embarrassing. They were relentless. Every message designed to twist the knife they assumed was still buried in me. But I wasn't bleeding anymore. One afternoon, I finally answered. Not to say anything, just to listen. Evan. My mother's voice cracked through the line like she'd been holding her breath. Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. You didn't even answer when Clay called. We're going through a really hard time right now. I said nothing. Just sat on my balcony, the wind gently rocking the wind chimes someone in the bookstore had hung. She took my silence as permission to continue. The vineyard is under real strain, she said. And I know you're upset, but this isn't the time for pride. We need to come together. For the family. I nearly laughed. Pride? As if I'd been the one who flaunted fake titles and flopped side projects. Then Clay got on the line. Seriously, man, he started, already exasperated. Can you stop acting like this is all some grand betrayal? We had a rough conversation. So what? Big deal. I stayed silent. You think I'm just some freeloader, right? Is that it? That's what this is about. He kept going. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Dad wants me to lead the estate. Mom expects me to make it work, but nobody gave me the tools, okay? He paused, like he was waiting for a response. When none came, he snapped, you're so self-righteous. You think because you paid a few bills, you get to sit on your throne and judge everyone. I could hear Mom trying to hush him in the background. You know what your problem is? He spat. You like being the victim. That's why you left. So you could sit up there in your little condo and feel sorry for yourself. That was the moment I knew he still didn't get it. I hadn't left to sulk. I'd left to live. Evan? Mom came back on, her tone more desperate now. Please. We don't want to fight. We just want things to go back to how they were. I finally spoke, my voice low and flat. Yeah, I bet you do. Then I hung up. The silence after that call was louder than the guilt trip. And for once, it was mine to enjoy. The next week, the messages slowed down. Not because they'd given up, but because they thought they'd worn me down. I could feel it in the tone, less anger now, more fake sweetness. Like they were trying to lure me back in with nostalgia and old photos sent at odd hours. Remember this, sweetheart? Your brother was so proud the day you got that job. It felt coordinated, like they had a script. But something kept nagging at me. One of Clay's voicemails, sloppy, probably drunk, mentioned a bank delay. The vendor's insurance is tied up because of some account issues, he'd mumbled. You know how that stuff works better than me. Account issues. That stuck with me. On a quiet Wednesday morning, I called the local agricultural bank that handled the estate's business accounts. I had the old account info from the years I managed their bills, so the rep didn't hesitate when I asked for a basic update. Well, she said, scrolling through her records, it looks like payments stopped being made consistently about 8 months ago. There were partial deposits here and there, but nothing full or on time since then. 8 months. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Sorry, are you saying that even while I was still sending money, the estate wasn't being paid up? There was a pause. We only received a fraction of what was due. Do you want us to send you the detailed statements? No, I said quietly. That won't be necessary. I hung up and just stood there for a minute, staring at the sink like it had answers. So that was it. They weren't just leaning on me. They were pocketing what I sent, diverting it. Maybe toward Clay's latest failed venture. Maybe to cover other bills. Or maybe just because they could. But the estate, the thing they claimed I was abandoning, had already been left to rot. By them. All that talk about tradition, legacy, family duty, it was just a cover. They'd been lying for nearly a year. Feeding me stories about urgent repairs while the bank waited for payments that never came. And I'd been the sucker footing the bill. I didn't feel shocked. I felt steady. Solid. Anger came next, hot and focused. I wasn't going to scream or send a long-winded reply. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Clay's number. If anyone was going to confirm the truth, it was him. Or rather, it was the way he would fail to lie about it. I called Clay that same afternoon. He picked up on the second ring, his voice a little too casual. Yo, Evan. Been a minute. Yeah, I said flatly. We need to talk. A pause. Okay, shoot. I spoke to the bank. Silence. I know the payments stopped 8 months ago. That's when I was still sending money, Clay. So tell me, where did it go? He exhaled loudly, like I just asked him to solve world hunger. Man, You're digging into old stuff again. Why can't you let this go? I want to hear it from you. Look, he said, his voice shifting to that rehearsed pleading tone I'd heard 100 times. Things got complicated, okay? The vineyard needed help in other areas. Equipment broke down. We had staffing issues. You know how it is. I didn't respond. Just waited. Clay got defensive. Don't act like you've never juggled bills. Sometimes you shift money around. That's all it was. That's not all it was, I said. The insurance lapsed. You left the account dry. And I was still sending full payments. His tone sharpened. Why do you care now? You left. You said you were done. So why are you suddenly playing detective? I kept my voice even. Because you and Mom and Dad lied. You took the money and let the vineyard fall behind. And now you're acting like I abandoned you. Clay scoffed. Oh, come on. This martyr act is getting old. I leaned back against the counter, staring at nothing. Just tell me where the money went. Another pause. Then he snapped. I don't know, all right? Things got messy. It went where it had to. That's not an answer. It's the best you're getting. You used it for yourself, didn't you? Don't start with that, he said quickly. Everything I did was for the estate. No, I said quietly. Everything you did was for Clay. Just like always. His voice turned cold. You're not better than us, Evan. You think sitting in your little condo makes you superior? You think not answering your phone gives you power? I didn't respond. You're just bitter, he hissed. You always have been. I could hear the desperation bleeding through his words now. He wasn't angry. He was exposed. Caught with nothing to stand on. I'm done, I said. For real this time. Oh, go ahead. Cut us off. But don't come crying back when you realize you still need your family. I hung up while he was still mid-rant. There was nothing left to say. It took me a day to cool off before I called my mother. I wanted to be calm, controlled. I didn't want another shouting match or more crocodile tears. I just wanted the truth, or at least to watch her try and dodge it. She answered on the first ring. Evan, she said, breathless like she'd been waiting by the phone for days. I'm so glad you called. I spoke to the bank, I said without any preamble. The tone in her voice shifted instantly. Oh, what did they say? That the estate hasn't been paid in full for 8 months, I said. Even while I was still sending money. She was quiet for a beat too long. Then came the deflection. Well, you know how banks are. Always behind on their records. They're not behind, I said. They have detailed logs. I double-checked. The money didn't go to them, but it went somewhere. You want to tell me where? Another pause. Evan, I think you're misunderstanding how things work. Running a vineyard isn't as black and white as your little office job. Don't, I interrupted, my voice sharp. Don't belittle my job. This isn't about my career. It's about the fact that I was still sending money while you and Dad pretended everything was fine. And it wasn't. Sweetheart, she started, her voice syrupy. We never meant to deceive you. Things got tough. Clay was going through a rough patch, and we needed to keep the lights on. No, you needed to cover for him, I said. And you thought I wouldn't notice. She huffed. Clay is trying his best. He's the face of the vineyard, Evan. He carries the vision. And I carried the bills, I snapped. While you let him play entrepreneur with my money. You're being dramatic. Fine, I said. Let's clear this up. I'll just call the bank again. Maybe even pull all the transfer receipts. We can all look at the numbers together. See where it went. Silence. Then, flatly, she said, that won't be necessary. Exactly what I thought. So you knew? I said. She sighed heavily. Of course I knew. But what were we supposed to do? Let the place fall apart? You always took care of things. We assumed you'd keep doing it. You assumed wrong. She tried to pivot. Your father and I gave you everything we could. We raised you, fed you, supported your education. Don't, I said, biting down the anger. Don't rewrite history. You didn't raise me to succeed. You raised me to be useful. You were always meant to help carry the load, she said, her voice suddenly cold. You're the dependable one. Clay was never built for that. And you used that as an excuse to drain me dry. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I didn't wait for another excuse. Don't call again unless you're ready to admit it. All of it. Then I hung up, for the second time in 2 days. And it felt even better than the first. He called just after sunset. I was sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch, flipping through an old notebook where I'd once sketched out ways to automate the estate's deliveries, back when I still believed I could fix everything if I just tried hard enough. The screen lit up. Dad. I let it ring twice, then picked up. Evan, he said, voice softer than I'd heard in years. I'm glad you answered. I didn't say anything. I know things got out of hand. Your mom told me you spoke to the bank. More silence from me. We made mistakes, he continued, sounding like he'd rehearsed it. I won't deny that. But it's not too late. We can fix this. We can figure out a plan. I'll talk to Clay. We'll tighten things up. Maybe set up repayment. A real schedule. I almost laughed. A plan? After years of dodging accountability, now he wanted structure? He kept talking. I know we leaned on you too much. That's on us. But this family can't survive without you, Evan. We need you. And there it was, the truth, buried in a soft voice. Not love, not remorse, just need. You say that like it's a compliment, I said. I mean it sincerely. No, I said. You mean it conveniently. He sighed. Son, we'll pay you back. We'll start with the car note. Maybe a portion of the vineyard loan each quarter. Stop. He did. I'm not looking for repayment plans. I'm not interested in patching this up. His voice dropped. So that's it. You're just going to walk away from your own blood. I already did, I said. And you didn't notice until the money stopped. That's not fair. It's exactly fair, I said, calm now. I've spent years being the fallback plan. You didn't want a son. You wanted a safety net. I'm still your father, Evan. You were my father, I said. Then you became my debtor. And now, you're just a voice on the phone hoping I'll cave one more time. He didn't speak. I'm done, I said. No more transfers. No more late night calls. No more pretending this is anything but exploitation dressed up as family. He tried one more time. You're making a mistake. Family is everything. Then you should have treated me like part of it. I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call, blocked the number, and finally, turned off my phone. I leaned back on the carpet, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I wasn't calculating how to fix someone else's mess. I was just still. And then, without even realizing it, I smiled. It was a quiet night, the kind where even the lake outside seemed to hold its breath. I sat by the open window, glass of wine in hand. Ironic, really. One of the few bottles I'd taken when I left the estate. A 2013 Merlot, Clay's supposed masterpiece. I'd never liked it much. Too heavy, too self-important. But tonight, it felt like a symbol. A souvenir from a life I no longer owed anything to. I took a slow sip, letting it sit on my tongue. Still bitter. Still overrated. The bookstore downstairs had closed an hour ago. A soft shuffle of footsteps on the sidewalk faded into nothing. My phone sat face down on the table, blessedly silent. I hadn't turned it back on since I blocked the last of their numbers. I felt good. Not elated. Not angry. Just clear. After a while, I opened my laptop and pulled up the anonymous forum I'd found a few weeks ago. A place where people shared stories about family boundaries and breaking free from toxic dynamics. I'd read it every night before bed like a quiet ritual. Not to get advice, just to feel less alone. I typed out a post. Title: Walked away from my family after years of being their bank. Did I go too far? Then I told the story. Not every detail, not every wound, but enough. I ended it simply. They needed me when I was useful. Now they say I betrayed them. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. Did I go too far? Or did I finally stop being their crutch? I hit post and closed the laptop without refreshing for replies. The world could weigh in later. I leaned back in my chair, glass in hand, and let the quiet fill the room. The war wasn't over. I knew that. People like my family don't retreat easily. But I wasn't afraid of them anymore. They might try again. They might even find new angles. But now, for the first time, I knew exactly what I would say. No.